You have a number. You won't tell us the number. You won't put it in the contract. You won't put it in the RFP. By not putting it in the RFP, we ensure that it goes to the private sector. So I'll ask you again the question that Mr. Hopkins asked. To get an apples-to-apples comparison, what can the city of Regina provide this service for, and what can the private sector provide the service for? They're looking for taxpayer value. I'm looking for taxpayer value. Why can't we have that number?
Mr. Wanzura?
Well, Your Worship, quite frankly, we can give you our best estimate. We can give you what we believe it will cost. However, some of the things that are pretty apparent in recycling services across Canada, and these were in some of the briefs submitted by Local 21. One is, or in their submissions earlier this year, one is that no program is identically the same. They're all a little bit different across Canada. That's why in our estimation we've tried to do our best to make this a local Regina estimate. And the other is that costs are influenced greatly by things that are outside of the city's control, such as participation rate of the community, tons per household collected. Those sorts of things impact our efficiency. And while those are things that we can estimate and provide some surety to council on, those are the things that in the private sector will build into their price as risk. Because we can give you our best estimate, but we have no certainty over what those will be, and we can give you an upset cost. We think that is what it will cost us to deliver, and through our own optimization and efficiency, we believe we can get those costs more refined and down. But some of those unknowns are things that the private sector will build into their price.
Well, if they won't if they can get away with it, and apparently the city of Ottawa didn't allow them to get away with it. Is that my reading? Is my reading correct? The city of Regina paid an annual rate which amounted to millions of dollars for tons uncollected.
City of Regina or the City of Ottawa?
City of Ottawa. City of Ottawa.
Mr. Wanzura?
Your Worship, that's my understanding. I'm not intimately familiar with the City of Ottawa's circumstance, but I believe their contract was around guaranteeing provision of 80,000 tons of compost to Orga World. They only delivered 56,000 tons, but they were contractually obligated to pay the 86,000 ton amount.
So if the community doesn't recycle or compost as much as estimated, then in the Ottawa case, at least, it was the taxpayers who bore the risk, not the private sector. And I'm not sure that, I just don't have the confidence that I want to proceed without having this benchmark in there. I want to see the best value for taxpayers' money.
My first question to the administration is, you had indicated that every city is different and every circumstance is different. Is that the rationale behind not being able to be accurate with a benchmark?
Mr. Wanzura?
A local benchmark?
Well, Your Worship, I think that every city is a little bit different, but also garbage is different from recycling. And as one of the delegations told you, we pick up garbage from 60,000 households every week. We have for decades. But recycling is not garbage. The materials are different. They're lower density. You don't crush them, so you can remarket them, make them available for sorting and recycle. That changes your productivity, your routing, that sort of thing. So it is different. It is absolutely different, and we have done our best to provide a number with high confidence that we think would be the basis of a budget number should the city choose to deliver that service. And it's also the basis that we would use as a benchmark for the private sector in terms of what would be a ceiling price that we would consider an acceptable price. So we have high confidence in the benchmark that we've produced.
And explain to me one more time, I'm going to repeat Councillor Clifton's question in regards to the issue of not providing that benchmark in this report.
Mr. Wanzura?
Mr. Chairman, as we mentioned at Executive Committee, when you look at the benchmark will influence the marketplace in terms of what is a price that we would expect. And if council chose to go a benchmark route, that number would be included in the RFP. That would be very clear and transparent for the bidders that here's the number we consider a benchmark. One of the implications of that is it does influence the marketplace. It does say here's the number that we think is appropriate or upset, and you can influence the marketplace. If you go without a benchmark, you have a competitive process that is pure. It is not influenced by what the city will be prepared to pay or what's an upset price to pay. And you likely have the ability to get better pricing. As we heard at Executive Committee, there were 8 bidders interested in Saskatoon at the pre-tender conference. I confirmed that with my counterpart. They had eight bidders, some of the firms, national firms from across the country, who are interested in their recycling contract. And if that's the case, we're also confident that we'd get a very competitive submissions from both local and national firms.
Did they have a benchmark?
They have an upset price, which they call it an affordability ceiling, and they have again, I'm not that intimately familiar with their calculations, but they have an upset price per household per month that they will accept as part of their RFP submission.
And is their decision to go to contract that service out?
Mr. Wanzura?
Mr. Chairman, yes, the City of Saskatoon is choosing to contract to go to the private sector for their recyclable collection and their recyclable materials handling facility.
And the purpose of their benchmark?
I can't speak to the purpose of their benchmark, but they have calculated what they've determined to be their ceiling price that they will accept.
So would our benchmark be a ceiling price?
Mr. Wanzura? Well, essentially it is. It would be telling the marketplace that here's the maximum price that we'll consider as a compliant bid. Anybody exceeding this price will be deemed non-compliant, and we'd move on to the next.
Let's, I guess we'll test the amendment first of all. If it passes, then Councillor Clifton, you can go ahead with a second amendment. It's probably the best way to handle this. So in favor of putting a benchmark into the RFP, all in favor? Against? That is carried, so there will be a benchmark. Councillor Clifton, now you had the floor as you made that amendment, so you've got the floor again. And I think that's where, because right now, the card issue that the solicitor brought forward is not included.
So I think where we are then, if I can try and capture the understanding that I hope we all have, is that with part of the RFP, with one of the conditions of the RFP being that you have to meet a benchmark, the question then becomes whether in the RFP you have to provide the carts as part of that benchmark. And I think actually that's fair, because we can include in our benchmark the cost of including the carts as part of our benchmark. So I guess it's not needed then. The carts can stay in the RFP. Is my understanding fair, Mr. Mayor, through you?
Well, Mr. Wanzura, can you, I think you're right, but Mr. Wanzura will clarify.
Your Worship, yes, we're fully costed, whether it's purchasing the carts, depreciating, we're fully costed, all in.
So just to clarify then, if I may, what you're suggesting then is the RFP will include in the tendering process that the contractor would provide the carts. I want to make sure I understand that.
Your Worship, if I follow the amendments correctly, yes.
Yep.
Back to the original motion as amended. Speaking order, Councillor Berger.
Thank you, Your Worship. We did some good work tonight. I'm pleased that we're going to be including a benchmark. I said that at Executive Committee, and I still believe that is the way to go. By doing this, we've confirmed we will not be delaying the RFP process, which I think was critical. We have studied this significantly at a long length of time. I'm interested, as others are here, is providing the best possible service, the most efficient service to residents, and whether that's by the public sector or private sector, let the marketplace decide that. And I think we're going to be seeing that. as I was listening to some of the discussions on the amendment to put back the local benchmark, I was looking at the origins of how we got to the RFP process. And part of that was that we wanted the private sector who said they could deliver the service to determine what that cost would be. We didn't have a preconceived notion we were going to have the private sector deliver this. It was we wanted to see what they could do. And we're going to be doing that now. Of course, that's part of the process, but we never excluded the public sector from being involved with this. I still would love to have the private sector put the number in and say, the public sector say, this is what it is, be a competitive bid. We can't have this managed bid process. Can't have it. But the benchmark will tell us, by way of a proxy, closely what the public sector would be able to do in delivering the service. That is, I think, with respect to some other members of council, this is a better competitive process. Because we always have interference, as Councilor Clipsham had mentioned. There's always interference, by definition, in the marketplace. And this is not determining or predetermining any outcome. It's simply saying, this is what we want you to see as a ceiling. If you can't meet this mark, then we won't consider you. Now, again, we heard said that if all the private sector bids are deemed non-compliant because they're higher than the benchmark, one alternative is to say we're going to do it in-house now, because we found that it simply is more efficient to do it in-house, and I can live with that. It's not a union, anti-union situation, or just by definition going to the private sector. It is the best price for residents, the best, most efficient way to do it. We can't do it if we exclude that possibility. It simply isn't possible. So while we don't have the perfect number, we have the benchmark, we have the proxy. So I'm satisfied, and I'm hoping we can move forward as expeditiously as possible on having recycling. This has been a big hill to climb for council and the public, and the discussion has been really informative. I hope for those who are listening tonight that these are some very important issues that we're struggling with as a council. Not as a doctrinaire position, but as a pragmatic way to deliver service. And I'm pleased with where we're going, and I will support the report tonight.